Well, thank you so much, both for the invitation to be here, but honestly for a really, really fun and I don't know, kind of nostalgic time for me. So I was an undergrad at Chicago, so went through a very liberal arts background and studied a lot of different things. I talked to economists every day, but since I came to the Fed after leaving academia in 2000, have not always been so immersed in talking across a variety of disciplines. So this was fascinating, and I realized just how much I enjoy everything that all of you do, and how much I need to do more of that and plug in. So again, thank you for the invitation to come speak today. So I'm guessing most of you are fairly familiar with the Federal Reserve, at least in our role as the FOMC sets interest rates, like Wednesday, in terms of a large cut. Understanding how the economy works, right, is for us part and parcel of fulfilling our public mission. And what is our public mission? Well, part of that is to ensure price stability and maximum employment through monetary policy. It's also to sustain and support the stability of our financial system, so the banking system, but our entire financial system, so that we don't have situations like the great financial crisis in 2008 again. It's also to ensure a robust payment system, so that we can all go about our lives without worrying how the money is flowing through the system in some sense. So we have a large public mission, and understanding that in the economy is really critical. But I want to step back from that a little bit today and just talk about economics as a discipline. So my first question for you is going to be, what's the first words that, and I want you to just yell them out, what's the first words that come to mind when I say economics? All right, I heard money, I heard capitalism. What? Okay. Supply and demand. Awesome. Economics is all of those things. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to pull back the curtain a little and show you some other things that economics is in, but we're going to get back to all of the things that you just brought up, including money and capitalism. So oftentimes, you'll hear economics described as the study of the allocation of scarce resources. Not a surprise that people don't want to show up to your class if that's what they think they're going to hear about, right? We have a reputation as a dismal science. But really, what drew me into economics, and the reason that I devoted my career to this study, is that really for me, and the way that I was, again, trained and socialized at Chicago, is that the study of economics, or economics as a discipline, is really the study of the world around us. The world that we actually live in, why it is the way it is, and how it changes over time. So we're going to take an example. Just walk outside this building. You're in Midtown, right? You look around yourself and you say, okay, well, Midtown doesn't look the way that it did, let's say, 25 years ago, right? What drove the decision of the Federal Reserve to move from downtown Atlanta to our building over here on 10th Street? What drove the decision for Georgia Tech to expand its campus over here? Why? Are there more apartment buildings going up in Midtown than condominium buildings going up in Midtown? What is going to happen to sort of the amenities and keeping this area vibrant, right? And then what about the communities that were displaced, potentially, or other parts of Atlanta? Why are they not thriving the way Midtown is thriving, right? What is the role of the local government in Atlanta or the local businesses in supporting economic mobility and resilience or providing these amenities? What do we all get out of them? If I look around the country, there are many other cities that are not growing as much as Atlanta is, that have great difficulty, right? We can look back to Detroit's bankruptcy, the ongoing challenges in many urban areas, including cities like Baltimore. So we can ask ourselves, why is that? It's clearly not easy. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it. Economics wants to understand those questions, right? Those are the things that we study. Those are the questions that intrigue us from a variety of dimensions. You can scale those questions up. So you can ask, well, why are some countries more prosperous than other countries, or why do they grow faster? We might say, well, it's their economic system, right? They've got a capitalist system. We understand some of the incentives and the movements for innovation that might come from that. We can also look to things like natural resources. We might look to things like systems of government, right? We might look to, in many cases, quite frankly, the independence of the central bank, or lack thereof, and what role does that play in supporting a robust economy, right? I have a lot of colleagues who were drawn into economics because they came from other countries and they were curious about why their country had a very different experience than other countries that they saw. And I think all of us as citizens, right, have naturally a motivation and an interest in understanding where our country is going. Where would we like it to go? There may be very different opinions on that. Where would we like it to go? But how does that actually become a reality? So the striving for an economist is to really understand the world in which we live. It's also to understand then how that world is determined in many ways through a lens of decision making. Decision making by individuals. It means all of us in this room. We decide every day, where am I going to buy my coffee? Am I going to buy my coffee? Am I going to make my coffee? Why did I come to school at Georgia Tech? Would I like to take a different academic job? What research project am I going to pursue? Right? Where am I going to live? Do I want one of those apartments? Do I want the condos? Do I want to get married? How am I going to vote in the election? We make a million decisions. And economics is really about understanding how you make those decisions and giving you a bit of a lens, or a toolkit, if you will, into thinking about that. But it's not just us as individuals, right? It's businesses. So why did Starbucks just redo the coffee shop down on Peachtree, right? What drives mergers and acquisitions? Why is Amazon as big as it is? How did they come to monopolize, or roughly speaking, cloud services, right? What do we gain from that? How did they know that we were going to love to have things same-day delivery, right, on my phone, and I can have it dropped off at my door? That wasn't the world that we used to live in. The decisions that were made, right, and those decisions were thinking about others, those decisions drive the world that we see, right? The decisions of organizations matter. What kind of curriculum are you going to run in liberal arts here at Georgia Tech? It's part of what we're talking about, I think, is to share information and to talk about the value and the different perspectives. And we've heard a lot of that this morning and this afternoon. How is the Federal Reserve going to decide on interest rates, right? We had a lot of discussions in my building last week about what Raphael Bostic, our president, was going to do. He's a voting member this year. What's appropriate? Is it appropriate to increase interest rates, decrease interest rates, hold them constant? Those are the decisions of organizations, right, and businesses. The city of Atlanta, everyone from the mayor on down is thinking about, okay, how can I support the objectives of the community in which I serve and in which I live? And those decisions all come together through a system of voluntary exchange to realize the world that we live in. And so that's what we study, right? So think of it, and I want to kind of put this out there, as a bit of a toolkit or a lens to understanding the world. It is not, I want to be really clear as an economist, it is not the only toolkit. So we heard about history, we heard even about languages and the way we speak and the words that we use. We can hear about sociology and we can talk about psychology. All of those lenses and perspectives are important for understanding the world. Economics just provides one that you can use in combination with all these others to understand how these decisions are made. So what is the toolkit? How do we think about these decisions? Well, really, we start with kind of two basic things. We say, all right, a person, a business, an organization, a government is going to have some objective that they want to achieve, right? So how many people in here have taken an economics class? Awesome, okay. All right, so usually, right, if you're taking a microeconomics class, we start and we have something called a utility function, right? So we say, okay, you're a person, you have a utility function. Utility brings you happiness. And so you can have stuff in there like, I want to take vacations, and yeah, I love Starbucks coffee, and all those things. But you can also have leisure time. You can have having a family. You can say, my preferences, my happiness depends on other people's happiness, or it depends on the amount of social justice. We can fold everything in to a utility function, right? It may be a lot of the commercial activity that we see in the world, but it can also be anything else. We study how a person goes about achieving that objective, right? Making decisions to make themselves as happy as possible when they face constraints. Those constraints can be, I don't have all the money and resources in the world to do and buy and change all the things that I want to change. It can also be resources related to time. I value leisure. I value having food on the table and being able to, let's say, to take a vacation. I'm going to need to work to earn the money in order to get the things. Well, okay, that's an inherent trade-off, so I can start to think about how do I want to balance that. We might even these days call that work-life balance. But we study those decisions, right? And we ask those questions of people. And we also ask those questions of businesses. So a business, you can hear, very traditionally speaking, the sole objective is to maximize profit. But we now see a lot of businesses talking about, well, maybe there's some stakeholder values in here as well. Maybe it's maximizing profit, but I'm concerned about my workforce, right? And maybe I want to have a diverse workforce. Maybe as Georgia Tech is thinking about your choices and your decisions, the objective function could include having a diverse student body. It could include having a student body that's of a particular size, or changing the nature of graduate students versus undergraduates so that you remain vibrant, so that you can achieve your public mission. You can build everything into those objective functions, but there are always going to be constraints, right? And those constraints can be time, natural resources, effort, and sometimes, as you said, money. So when we think about, okay, well, how does any particular entity make a decision when they've got an objective function, but then a bunch of constraints that make those decisions hard, we talk about trade-offs. What are you willing to trade off? Right? And that's going to be individual to every organization or person that's going to drive it. We also talk about cost-benefit, right? So if I make a particular decision, maybe I decide to, I'll channel a story that I remember hearing from a student's parent when I was on the faculty at Notre Dame. We had a parent kind of meet and greet with the faculty day, and I was teaching in the business school, and one of my students, he happened to be an accounting major. His mom came up to me, and she said, so-and-so's in your class. I said, oh yeah, he's a great student. He's really interested. She goes, yeah, he came home, and he said, he really wanted to be a veterinarian. And she says, his father and I told him, like, honey, that's not really probably going to get you a very good job, so you should be an accounting major, and just go get a dog. And I was like, my head nearly blew up because I really wanted that young man to leave and go to vet school. I mean, that was where my head was. But my point here is, in thinking about those trade-offs, this young man was dealing with a lot of trade-offs, right? Was the certainty of a career versus the pay that he might get versus the passion that he might have. And maybe for him, a job in accounting was worth that trade-off. For others, again, I suspect that might not be the case. But the point is, all these trade-offs are sitting behind the scenes, and that's where the hard decisions are made, right? The easy decisions are ones that you can see. They've got no cost. Something that's always better. Economics will tell you there are very few of those decisions in life. Most of the decisions, whether in an organization, as you're in a faculty meeting and you're trying to figure out what to do and everyone's got a different opinion, it means everyone's got a different sense of those trade-offs, right? So we've got trade-offs. We talk about cost-benefit, and that leads us to kind of thinking about voluntary exchange. Everything that happens in this economy is subject to voluntary exchange. I'm at a job, they're paying me money, I'm supplying my effort. It's a voluntary exchange. I can go find a different job, they can tell me I'm not doing a good job. That's how it works. I walk into Kroger, I say I want to buy a six-pack Coke, right? It's a voluntary exchange. This is where I do want to kind of address this idea of what is money, right? Money for many people, I think, is an indicator of wealth, of resources, of access, right? Because it does, in fact, lighten up that constraint and allow you to make choices that those who don't have as many resources can't make. But to an economist, money is actually kind of a different thing. I mean, we talk about wealth and we talk about all of those issues. But money for us actually solves the problem of voluntary exchange, right? Because if we didn't have money, meaning a unit of account, the notion of a dollar, right? You know what I'd have to do? I'd have to go find somebody who wants to listen to me talk about economics, who has the food that I want to eat tonight, right? It's an incredibly inefficient way to run a society. Doesn't lead to high standards of living. Certainly probably would not keep me very well fed. So, money for us is a theoretical concept, and it serves a purpose to allow all of these individual decisions based on everyone's individual objectives and then collectively how we come together, right? Through our representative government system, through our organizations, nonprofits, businesses, and institutions to affect the world that we live in, right? So for us, money is a way to make that happen. And then again, yes, it is, of course, related to all other things. So you can also open up questions about how that money is allocated. What does tax policy look like? What's optimal tax policy? How do we even define optimal? We all, again, may have very different ideas about that. Those are the things that economics really strives to study. So, I mean, honestly, Laura's going to talk a little bit about some of the work in the School of Economics here, but there's sort of no end to the places you could apply the toolkit. Now, once you aggregate those decisions up, right, what you realize is this is a complex system that really can't be engineered, right? This is not a sort of a situation, even at the Fed, right? They lowered interest rates by 50 basis points. It is not push a button on the interest rates. Here are the things that are then going to happen. We actually don't know what's going to happen, right? So, maybe that's a little too much behind the scenes, but we don't. We really, really don't. We're learning just as much as everybody else because of the complexity of all these individual decisions, right? Are people going to buy more? Are they going to now start to refi their houses? Are they actually going to start moving? Is more investment going to be done? How is this going to change behavior? Is the consumer going to feel a little more stable? Are they going to spend more money? We honestly don't know. So we're going to watch and we're going to see. So as you scale up into complexity, you start to realize that what you have to do as you're studying decision making is also change the questions you're asking and sort of constantly watch how the world is evolving and feed that back into what you do. So we come up with theoretical models. We come up with statistical models. We look at quantitative data, right? But we're constantly evolving as a discipline. We're evolving the questions we look at, but we're also evolving our ability to answer them or to take account of how the world has changed around us. So for example, supply chains, got completely destroyed during COVID. One question for us is, are they coming back to the same thing they were before? Are they coming back to normal? Or is there some new normal? Part of what we learned as we talked to businesses is, well, hey, I found out that if I'm reliant on one particular country or one supplier, there's a lot of risk there. So now I'm going to diversify my supply chain network. And when I diversify that, I'm going to have less business risk. Okay. Well, then I now start to think about what is the risk to the economy if there's a future supply shock. I also start to think, is that more expensive? If that's more expensive, then the businesses have a higher cost of business. Then they start to think about how they're going to price products, or maybe they're going to not be able to scale up as much as they thought they would. That folds into GDP. That folds into my thoughts about employment. That folds into situations and contemplations about inflation and interest rates. So all of this is really a very complex, challenging, incredibly fun way to approach the world. I will also say that the activity that's going on here at Georgia Tech is part of the change that happens in the world, right? So take one little example. I'm virtually certain there's folks here doing robotics and AI things. So suppose you came up with a way to design a robot that could do very kind of fine motor skill type things that human hands would do, right? So immediately you say, oh, this is really cool, this is a great intellectual challenge. What could be the impact of this in the real world? One impact could be, well, that might be used as a prosthetic hand. So we could go into sort of the healthcare, but you're going to now need to understand insurance companies, the Medicare system, how the doctors are organized, what it costs can people pay for this. If you want to see that reality, the joy and sort of access and wonder that you could provide to someone who needed that device, you need to understand those things, or someone does, in order for that to have impact. There also might be, maybe a little more mundane, a use for that in food preparation, right? There's lots of people in kitchens. They use their hands for food preparation. Suppose you say, oh, that could be a use. Well, then you're going to need to understand, well, okay, what kind of company is this that prepares food? What kind of food do they prepare? How much labor cost do they have? How much food input cost do they have? What kind of space are they working in? What kind of quality do their customers demand? And does it matter if a robot did the food preparation or not? Maybe their customers, they don't want them to know that. Like, there's all kinds of things going on. Coincidentally, this week, Chipotle is experimenting with the Autocado, or the Guacbot, to do exactly that. Now, again, what I want to reiterate is this is an experiment, because Chipotle doesn't know whether this is going to work, right? They have an idea it's going to work. They understand their business. But ultimately, it's going to be, is this really cost-saving? Does this really provide the quality that consumers want? Will this allow them to do more things and to increase their business? So with all of that, I guess my bottom line message here is economic is a toolkit for anything that you want to do. So whatever your passion, physics, biochemistry, social justice, again, medical sciences, modern languages, and whatever, sort of intellectual challenge you're taking on, and whatever your goal. I want the world to be a better place. I want to reduce pollution. I want to make money, whatever those things are. The economic toolkit can help you figure out how to take the effort and the passion that you're throwing into the things that you want to do, that you see value in, and how you can scale those, and how you can turn ideas into action, hypotheses into understanding, right? And innovation or problem solving into real change at scale. So with that, Laura.
In response to that insightful presentation, we now welcome Laura Taylor, the school chair and a professor in the School of Economics. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Paula. I'll just say ditto. No, that was really a wonderful talk, and really, I'm just delighted to stand before you as a representative of economics and the economics discipline. It's something that I truly love and identify myself as. And I'm an optimist. For those of you who know me, I tend to be pretty happy, I tend to be pretty cheerful, and I tend to like to laugh a lot and so forth. And so you might wonder, what's an optimist doing in love with a discipline called the dismal science? Well, it turns out that at times, bad economic policy and bad governance can actually create heartbreaking outcomes for people. Famine, war, difficulties that seem we'll never recover from. And in those times, when we have failures of economic systems, and when they combine with failures in government and failures in policy, there are people who can come together with good economics and good policy and good governance to change that. And there's the optimism. Like when the bad day comes, when a pandemic is kicked off, when a financial bubble that maybe we should have seen but didn't pops, and people lose jobs, and children see their parents under immense stress. It is people like Paula, Federal Reserve, folks in DC, lawyers, economists who get together and try to make us as resilient and return to the place we want to be as soon as possible. And that's where an optimist fits into a dismal science, is that, yes, bad things can happen and bad choices can be made, but then we can turn it around. We can do the good things if we understand the systems. And that's the tools of economics that Paula was speaking about that allow us to do that. And I love the connection to history, something I had never thought about before. As an economist, I always think about our toolkit helps us understand why are we here? How did we get here? Through the economics lens, through the lens of decision making, trade-offs. How do people, whether it's a policymaker, a homemaker, a business owner, or an academic, how are we responding to incentives, good or bad? And if we want to change things, how do we change those incentives? And if we change them, what might we expect would happen? And so Paula spent a lot of time telling us all these wonderful examples, and I'm going to go through a few more of how some of society's greatest challenges today, healthcare, right, education, poverty, and environmental issues, climate change, really can be impacted in the most positive way by economics. I'm an environmental economist. I've spent 30 years working in environmental policy. And I can stand here before you today and tell you with 100% assurance that there is no environmental problem that exists today, none, not one, that is not fundamentally an economic problem. And during the break, if you want to challenge that with me, we'll have a talk. But therein lies the opportunity, bringing toolkits together to move us forward, to solve problems, to solve environmental challenges, to work with biologists on biodiversity. I grew up loving the ocean. I work on energy systems and offshore wind energy and how that might impact communities and the oceans in which they're placed. I work with my scientists, the marine biologists, with the engineers, and we all come together at Georgia Tech in particular, not because I study engineering or that I necessarily even speak the same language. I have to learn quite a bit, but we all care about the same thing. We care about the same thing. We each bring our lens, And when we all put our lenses on and we look at each other and we talk to each other, amazing things happen. Amazing things happen. New policies get created, right? New ways of doing things happen. New ways of thinking about how we can move forward, whether it's through taxing carbon or implementing cap and trade programs. We have to understand the physics, the science, the earth and atmospheric scientists, and we all get together and we understand how does pollution affect health? It's actually a really hard question to answer. Because if you think about it, we're exposed to low levels of pollution all day, every day. How do you run an experiment where some people get exposed to pollution, some people don't, and you look at the outcomes? That classic medical experiment, we can't do that in the real world. We can't randomize who gets pollution. We can't randomize who's born to a rich person or a poor person. Right? As economists, we borrow all these toolkits from all our partners in all the different disciplines to try to tease out answers to these, to understand how did we get here? What are the impacts of it? And if we understand those two things, just maybe we can move forward. Just maybe we can think of new incentives. Just maybe we can change the systems a bit. And so economics is, I loved hearing, like, what do you think about when you think of economics? I have in my course syllabus that often when folks think of economics, they're typically thinking macroeconomics, right? They're thinking interest rates. They're thinking the money supply, something like that. But I'd argue that, I'd like to share with you some things. Economics is so much more than that, and that's what our students get exposed to. Economics of climate change, environmental management, economics of health and health care, behavioral economics, bringing in psychology. We have courses in the economics of risky behaviors, and I don't record this. It's like, well, isn't this just the economics of sex, drugs, and rock and roll? And my professor said, oh no, please don't call it that. I can never live up to that in class. But it is. How do we end up in worlds with, how do you manage addiction, right? What kind of public policies can affect and improve lives when products are available that are highly addictive, right? Of course, we have classes in the international trade and finance, globalization, melding cultural competency with economic tools. All those things come together to put on a slightly different lens for our students as they pursue their passion. And that's one of the wonderful things about an economics degree, and one of the hard things for students is that you can do anything. But it's hard when you're on a job market and there's not A for accountant, right? It's hard to find the E for economist. And so where are our students? Our students are all over. Of course, they're at the Fed, right? But they're working on labor policy. They're working on unemployment. They're working in environmental firms, helping with their sustainability, moving sustainability forward. They're using their cultural competency to work on business optimization for Porsche and Mercedes in Germany. There are an untold number of opportunities. And where it starts, as you were saying, it starts with your passion. What are you interested in? Are you interested in the environment? Well, maybe the lens that works best for you is science. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's the lens of economics. I really thought I was going to be a marine biologist. Matter of fact, from the time I was 4 years old, I knew I was going to be a marine biologist. I chose my first college to go for marine biology, and then I got there, and it was not for me. It's not the lens that fit me. Okay? Doesn't mean that I'm still not passionate about the environment. It just meant that when I took my first economics class, because I thought it would help me learn to manage my money, that's not what it does. I fell in love with the thinking, with the tools. And then I was lucky enough to actually take an environmental economics class. It was like, whoa, the two things can come together. And then something we haven't mentioned today that I would like to bring up. And then my life was truly changed by a faculty member who in an offhanded way said to me, you know, Laura, you're pretty good at this. Have you ever thought about going to graduate school? I'm a first-generation college graduate. It never occurred to me. I didn't even know what a PhD really meant. I knew that my professors were called doctors. I didn't really know what that meant. And one comment, one afternoon, by one faculty member changed the course of my life. We do that here at Georgia Tech all the time. We inspire our students without knowing it. We say something that piques their interest and their curiosity runs in a new direction. By offering the breadth of opportunities across the Ivan Allen College and Georgia Tech, the kid who goes to school who thinks, I'm going to be a marine biologist, takes, by way of next thought, I was going to be a graphic designer, takes the art class, was like, oh, this isn't quite my lens either, explores the world through the courses, through the professors, and finds a home that speaks to me, that allows me, though, to follow my passions. That's the beauty of a liberal arts education. It's a beauty of a liberal arts education at Georgia Tech. It's no different, right? And well, some parts are different, but it's a wonderful opportunity. And so in ending, I want to share with an example of what I think epitomizes not just an economics degree at Georgia Tech, or even some of the different ways in which we have been approaching the world and share that with our students, but it's through an alumni story. And I think this embodies what it means to be a student at Georgia Tech. So he's an econ major, and after graduation with his undergraduate degree, went and worked for, I think it was a friend's dentistry office, just sort of a bridge job. While he was working there, he realized and saw that there are a lot of people in this world that are underinsured. They have some insurance, but not a lot, not the kind of insurance that many of us in the room do. And so what happens for the underinsured is that regular lab tests become incredibly expensive for them, right? Because they're not getting the $15 for a lab test. Some of the more catastrophic things are covered, but it's right there in the middle where they don't have any coverage, and they're incredibly expensive. And he saw people not getting lab tests because it was too expensive. And it's so critical for the medical community to have that information. So he saw a problem, he saw a challenge, and he wanted to make it better. So he became an entrepreneur. He built a company, it's right here in Tech Square, where what he does is he acts like an aggregator. He's thinking like, well, what's Walmart doing? They're just buying a whole bunch of stuff at bulk and selling it at a discounted rate. He now buys lab tests in bulk. He negotiates bulk prices and then passes that savings on to the underinsured. And I was looking at it earlier today, and as of right now, he has saved patients, let's pull it up. 250,000 lab tests have been ordered through his startup, saving customers well over $30 million in the pocket of the underinsured. That's a Georgia Tech grad, that's an economics grad. We're everywhere, doing everything. We're sneaky. But it is a wonderful opportunity. I appreciate all the different ways all the speakers have talked about the lens of the liberal arts. They're all sort of pointing in the same direction, right? We're going to think like the fox. We're going to learn. We're going to have a world of curiosity. And in all the different ways in the liberal arts, we're able to provide that at Georgia Tech to our students to spark the imagination, to keep them curious, and to allow them to find the lens that works best for them so that they can go make the change that they want to see in their life. Thank you.